Hello, and welcome to the Case Cloud MDM video series. In this engineering walkthrough, we'll talk about FileVault Management for macOS and Case Cloud MDM. We'll kick off with our development manager, Rodney Willis, and then be joined by John Herrick, our lead engineer on this feature. Note that if you'd like to skip ahead to any of the key topics, the timestamps are listed here at the end of the introduction.
We are excited to bring this feature to our customers. This builds on a recent introduction of macOS support through Case Cloud MDM. In today's video, we're going to focus on four things. First, understanding what FileVault is and why it's important. Second, we're going to focus on creating and importing the certificates that are needed by FileVault. Then we will look at creating the configurations to deploy to the devices, and finally, actually deploying those configurations to those devices. John, by helping our viewers understand what FileVault is and why it's important.
Okay, FileVault is the term for macOS full disk encryption. It's actually currently on version 2. And what this does is prevents unauthorized access to the data on the disk. If you don't have a password, you're not getting in essentially. There's different types of keys that can unlock the disk for administrators. There's personal recovery keys and institutional recovery keys. That's the two options administrator has for locking access to the disk.
Great. So let's look at how we actually go about creating those certificates and then importing them into Case Cloud MDM.
Okay, the first step is creating an institutional recovery key certificate. The first thing that the admin will need to do is create a master keychain. So this command here in terminal is the one you'll need. This command is in the current documentation. Running that through terminal will ask me for a password. Enter the password, retype the password, and the keychain has been created there. Now, the first thing to do with this keychain is to create a new folder, call it master. This will become obvious in a few steps, and copy the master keychain into the master folder. With the keychain access, double click on the keychain. That will open the file up in keychain access. Now you'll see there are two parts to this. There's the recovery key and the master password key. Now you don't have to do this, but a recommendation is for the public part of it, which is the one that's not in the master folder, is we just delete the master password key. The reasons for that is so that we don't make the mistake of generating the wrong certificate. So the next step is to export the recovery key as a certificate. Now by default it should go to the .cer format and should be able to place it in the same folder as actual keychain. What I've done here, just select the file format .cer, click save. Public certificate for the institutional recovery key. To import that into Case Cloud MDM, go to libraries and certificates, click add new, choose a certificate, browse to folder. And that's the one we want the .cer file. And I would recommend that you add in a description just so you can distinguish it. So I'll call this public, just so I'm aware of it. And click add. And you'll now see you have a FileVault recovery key in there that you can use in your FileVault configurations, but we'll come to that in a minute. The next step is to create encryption and decryption certificate for reporting the personal recovery key from the device. Again, that's very simple, a little bit easier than the institutional recovery key. You simply go to Certificate Assistance from Keychain Access and click Create a Certificate. Let's give this a name. You can change these values if you want. You can upload your own certificate, but these default self-signed values will work. So if we create that, click Continue. If I go into Keychain Access again and search for video demo. Now there's two parts to this. First step is give me the export option. There we go. Export this video demo certificate. We'll export the public key first. Again, if you're exporting the public key, remember and select the .cer file. Now we'll give this public, just so we know, and I'll store that somewhere separately. A self-signed certificate, so I know what it is. So we'll save that. Next, I'll export the self-signed certificate as a personal information exchange. Now, what that is, private key for the certificate. We need this for decrypting the data that comes back from the device during the inventory process. That encrypted data contains the device's personal recovery key. I'll simply save this as private. And again, if you're exporting a private key, remember and select personal information exchange format down here. Now you will be asked for a password here. Enter it and remember it, because you'll need this password when you're uploading it to CaseCloud MDM. It needs the login password to export it. Good, okay. So we'll now upload the certificates that we need for encryption and decryption of the personal recovery key. Go to self-signed certificates, video demo, upload the public first. This is where the description comes in quite handy. You see that it uses the name that we generated there. That's why the description comes in handy, because it allows us to differentiate between the two. So to upload the private certificate, we'll select the private.p12 file, select that, and add in the description to mark it as private. Now, you will have to enter the password, which will obviously have to match the one used to generate the export file, otherwise it won't upload. We'll click upload, so enter the password and click add. You can see there now that we've got the private and the public key, and we've also got the institutional recovery key. One thing to double check here is, when you're using an institutional key, just verify that the fingerprints match. You can see the SHA-256 fingerprint matches the fingerprint here. If it's not, then the export has gone wrong and you maybe exported the private key by mistake, which I've done a few times before. So just make sure that's correct before you actually go as far as creating a configuration and encrypting a device. So that covers the three certificates that we'll need for creating a FileVault configuration. We'll now move on to actually creating a configuration for FileVault. Now you can see at the bottom here, FileVault's in the bottom of the list. Clicking that gives you the standard FileVault list and detail section here. So the first thing you do is click Add New. You'll be asked to give a name. So we'll call this Video Demo Test. Now, there's a variety of options here. You can create an institutional recovery key. You can use a personal recovery key. You have to do one or the other. We'll do everything here. So we'll pick the FileVault recovery key, the public one, for our institutional key. Add that to the configuration. We'll also use a personal recovery key. Now with a personal recovery key, you can choose to show it just to the user and not report it to CaseCloud MDM, or you can report it to CaseCloud MDM as well. You can add in a short message and this is presented to the user. We'll do that for this demo. Now this is where we need the personal recovery key encryption certificate, and that is the public key of video demo self-signed certificate that we just created. You can set it up so that CaseCloud MDM can decrypt the personal recovery key. In that case, you need to select the private key. I should explain that the public key gets sent to the device, but the private key is only stored in CaseCloud MDM in the event that you're using sensitive certificates for your organization. The private one is not sent to the device. Now, the last two options here require that FileVault be unlocked after hibernation. This is more an option for mobile devices like laptops, because Hibernation doesn't work at all actually on desktop devices, and you can't really test it on VMs. There is an option to see that the setting has been applied, but testing it is difficult. And the last option is the FileVault Enablement Bypass Limit. What that does is on first logon under this configuration, the first time a user logs in with FileVault enabled, they will be forced to enable it. Now you can choose if you want to allow the user to cancel that as many as 10 times. But for the purpose of this demo, we'll just disable that and we'll force them to enable FileVault as soon as they log in.
So John, let's recap what we've done here, just to make sure everyone's clear on the steps. First, we went and generated the keychain, which is for the institutional recovery key, correct?
Yes.
And then we generated a self-signed certificate, which we could use for the personal recovery key. And that included two parts, one which was the public key or public certificate for encrypting the volume, and the second export was for the actual private key so that Case Cloud MDM could then decrypt the personal key. Did I get that right?
Yes, the personal key can be included in Case Cloud's inventory process, but it needs to be encrypted, so you have to supply a certificate for that. And then if you want to view the decrypted key through Case Cloud MDM, you have to supply the private key. But you don't have to do this. Perhaps the admin user wants to leave this up to the user. They want it to be there. If they forget it, then they have to reinstall everything. Maybe they want to manage that personal recovery key. They don't want to take the risk of the user maybe writing it down in a sticky note and attaching it to the top of the laptop.
Right. Okay, perfect. So now we've got our FileVault configuration created. As soon as you click save, that is, it'll be created and installed in Case Cloud MDM. And then we're ready now to actually deploy this to a device and turn on FileVault for the client system.
Yes.
Let's see how that happens.
It's very simple. We go to devices and we go down to FileVault. And we simply select the configuration, which in this case is the only one we have, and we set that to the device. This device is a dep enrolled 10.15 VM, this one here.
This can also be deployed to personal devices as well, non-dep enrolled.
Yes, it will work on manually enrolled devices as well. Now we can see that the configuration profile has been installed, containing all the settings that we would expect, including our wee escrow message and the video demo certificate that's been used for encryption. You can see that in here. What would happen is if the user logs out, and you can see that your administrator, they get this message saying your administrator requires that you enable FileVault. Now, if they choose to click cancel, they just get sent back to the login screen.
This was the bypass that you were talking about. They could possibly allow the end user to bypass this up to 10 times, correct?
Yes.
Right, perfect. Which is probably a good idea because sometimes your users might have something that they've got to get done right now, and volume does take a few minutes to do.
It does, especially for a large system, maybe a manually enrolled system. Yeah, it's going to take a while.
Very good.
So they log in, and this time enable now. So we're told so FileVault has been enabled on their volume. Okay, to that, you should see the personal recovery key for the device.
The personal recovery key that we sent down to the device?
This is for this specific device. Now, the user, depending on how you set up your configuration, you don't have to show this to the user, but if you don't show this to the user and you use a personal recovery key, you have to send it to Case Cloud MDM. So you've got two choices. Well, you've actually got three. You can show it to the user, or you can send it to Case Cloud MDM, or you can do both. In this case, we've decided to show it to the end user to show the process, and we'll also report it during inventory.
Perfect.
Click continue. We should eventually get access to the desktop, and you can actually view the progress of the FileVault encryption. This should be pretty quick because it's relatively small VM. So just go to security and privacy and FileVault. Now you can see that it's 4 minutes remaining. One other thing I'd like to point out on here with our FileVault configuration, if it's enabled on the device, we do not allow the user to turn it off. So even if they One here, you notice that the button is disabled. That's by design. So the user can't have it enabled by an administrator and then decide they don't want it anymore. It's fixed in place. Obviously, for manually enrolled devices, they're able to remove the profile, but for DEP machines, it is locked.
Well, this is encrypting. If a user forgets their password and needs to be able to access it, they could call up the admin. The admin could go into Case Cloud, look at that device, and then view the personal recovery key for that device to give it to the user.
Yes, once an inventory has been run on an encrypted device, provided you have chosen. Yes, so in this case here, we are reporting the personal recovery key and we've also enabled set decryption.
This case here, because it's still encrypting, inventory hasn't run yet, right?
Well, an inventory is run every night, I believe, so they could run it immediately after the encryption is completed.
Okay, so encryption does have to complete first, is where we're going with that, correct?
I think so. Let me run it, see what happens, because the personal recovery key has already been set. Just checking the progress. So on the general section, as we are here, of enrolled macOS device, there are some new bits of information down here that we show whether the device is encrypted, whether it has a personal recovery key, whether it has an institutional recovery key, and if the personal recovery key is reported in MDM, it says viewable here. This is encrypted. Now the decrypt button only becomes available if the configuration associated with the device has the correct decryption certificate, and from there they can view the personal recovery key for the device.
Okay, we got about a minute remaining on the encryption. So we've seen how to create this configuration. We've seen how to deploy it to the device and the profiles that are created on the device as a result so that you can verify that it's installed and view the status of the encryption process. And then finally, you just showed us how we can inventory the device, how we can pull back that personal recovery key during the inventory process, and then view and decrypt it in case the user has lost their password. Anything else you want to share with us about this process?
Perhaps only one thing, that FileVault is available through policies, so you could choose to add FileVault to a device automatically with policies, so it doesn't have to be a manual option.
Yep, that's good. Policy management, of course, is the automation system that we have in place for making sure devices are brought into configuration and that configuration is enforced. So linking the FileVault profile to the policy and then pushing that change would cause it to be applied automatically to every device that's associated with that policy. Well, it says we got about 30 seconds left on the encryption just to verify that this actually did work as expected.
Once that's completed, what I'll do is I'll just restart the machine, because when a FileVault machine starts up, it's slightly different. The user's password has to be entered pre-boot. The password has to actually unlock the device. So I'll just show that working once it completes and we reboot it.
Okay, so we see that encryption has finished. With that, let's go ahead and reboot the machine.
So what would normally happen with the Mac is you would get here and you would get the black screen with the white Apple logo and then a progress, and then you get the user screen. When the device is locked with FileVault, the password has to unlock the disk before the macOS system will even boot. So in this case, add in the user password. You can see here you get the progress screen after the user is logged in. So they need their password to unlock the disk to get access to the full operating system.
Good. And that brings up some other things that we're going to talk about in our next video, where we're going to deal with recovery. If a user has forgotten their password, how you can gain access to that disk so you can back up data, those types of things. And we'll deal with some of the other recovery situations in that video. So to understand the difference in the process, how the password is now required before the disk, before the machine boots. So that is a difference that users might not expect.
Also, admin users should be aware that even though the machine's on and they're at that stage before the user has entered the password, the machine will not respond to any MDM commands because the system is not running. So for it to even respond to an inventory, the disk will need to be unlocked by a FileVault enabled user.
That's a good piece of information. Thanks, John. This has been a great walkthrough. Any final things you want to share?
Not at the moment. We'll cover all the other issues in the second video.
Excellent. Well, Julie, back to you.
Thanks, Rodney, and thanks to John for that in-depth demo. So that concludes our walkthrough of FileVault Management for macOS and Case Cloud MDM. Again, be sure to watch for part 2 on this topic, where we cover troubleshooting related to the setup and application of FileVault.
To review documentation, visit docs.casecloud.com. If you have additional product questions, visit us at support.quest.com. And stay connected by following us on Twitter @QuestExperts.